her timeline. I don't have to tell you how important that is. We followed her footsteps up by the campus area, where she was last seen on that fateful morning. There was some discrepancy in the reports, which need to be resolved, but now we follow Ira's footsteps across town after she was seen in the campus area. All the way across town now we go, across the river. We're following her footsteps down to the riverbanks where she was found, a body lying there. The sound of my voice will paint the picture of a geographical area. How did she get from the campus area all the way across town in a neighboring jurisdiction across the river? What was that area like? I will paint that picture for you as best I can if you'll listen to the sound of my voice. If you're visually inclined, you may go to the website where you can see this episode and the accompanying digital mapping program that follows my voice as well. www.abodylyingthere.com, all one word, abodylying, Lying, there.com. In the upper right hand corner, there's a menu. Click on that, expand it to episodes, down to episode 5. You'll recall last week, an exclusive video was to accompany episode 4, which never made it onto the website, but it's there now. It's a video that police released early on in the investigation of Ira dropping off clothes at the Goodwill that morning. There may be something you notice in her movements as she's dropping off the clothes. There may be something you would expect to see that maybe you don't. Off the website, you'll go to episode 4, and then there's an expanding button for exclusive. That video is there now. Shall we proceed? There's that feeling of being overwhelmed when you're looking down at the dining room table and the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle are scattered. Without that picture on the box, it's impossible. Well, it's much more difficult to put the pieces together. So I apologize to the detectives and sleuths out there. The facts come at us from all different directions. We don't have that frame of reference. You've heard of the expression, can't see the forest through the trees. We get so far into the forest All we can see is trees. How do we get back? Where did we park? But visuals always help, and North Carolina is located on the eastern seaboard of the United States between New York and Florida, and that's a start. Charlotte, a major city in the United States, named after the Queen Consort, King George III. We ditched the king and kept the queen's name. What's a consort? Why not just a queen? Oh well. But it's a major city, and it's encircled by I-485, an interstate. So you can picture that. Charlotte's a city in the middle, surrounded, encircled by I-485, a huge circle, about 12 miles in diameter. Charlotte's right in the center. Above it is 12 o'clock, below 6. To the right of the city is 3 o'clock, to the left is 9. The campus area is located at 2 o'clock on the outer edge of the circle. We have a rough idea what she was doing up there. By all accounts, shortly after being seen up there, she was found all the way across on the other side of the circle at the 9 o'clock position. In fact, she was seen at the 9 o'clock position on the outside of the circle across the river in a neighboring county. On campus, we've heard various reports. "9:30, 9:45 seen on campus." By all accounts, next stop, the bank. But from there, the accounts are different. Half of the reports have her stopping at Jackson's Java and then going to the Goodwill to drop off donations. The other half of the reports have her going from the bank directly to the Goodwill and then to Jackson's Java. But all the reports have her stopping or next being seen at the YMCA parking lot. Now, how she got there, we don't know. Likely she traveled one of three ways. She could have either have gone the path on the top of the circle, following I-485 until she got to the 9 o'clock position. She could have traveled on the bottom of the circle on I-485 until she got to the 9 o'clock position, or she could have traveled from the 2 o'clock position directly across the circle on I-85. Remember, the circle is I-485, but there was a direct interstate from the 2 o'clock position campus area that traveled across the circle directly to the 9 o'clock position. And that's I-85. No matter which way she took, following I-485 on the top or the bottom, or directly across the circle using I-85, it is only I-85 that crosses the river. Once she got to the 9 o'clock position, she would have had to have been on I-85 to have actually crossed the river. So then she crosses the river on I-85, and then she takes the first right, the first exit. It's Highway 273, aka Beatty Drive. She goes down that path about a half a mile and then turns into YMCA Drive. We're interested in this area because, we're detectives and it's the crime scene area. Oh yeah, it's possible that she was killed somewhere near campus and then driven to this area to be disposed of. But in the last episode, remember, the May 7th footage from WCNC has reported that at that time, May 7th, 2 days after she was found, Police quote, "They don't know if her trouble started in the campus area, but they believe that she was killed, quote, by the river." Now, of course, police all the time are putting out misinformation. But let's just take it for its face value. That she was killed by the river. That would make the YMCA area the crime scene area. Now, bear in mind, she wasn't killed on YMCA property. That we know. YMCA is generally safe. But it was that area. A great tool out there is Google Earth Pro, desktop version, Mac, Windows. Recommend that you can download it. We type in 196 YMCA Drive. It takes us right there. We're looking down on the parking lot. In the upper right, there's a tool for Google Earth Pro. You can rotate your position. It's as if you are hovering above the parking lot, going around in circles. I let my position rest so that I was hovering above the river, looking down at the YMCA. To my left is 85, coming across the river. I'm looking down on the YMCA property, and just to the right of that is the subdivision. It's interesting to note that when we look at this area, which is the crime scene area, that between the YMCA property and the subdivision next door, you'll notice there's a path. It looks like a mowed path that goes all the way from 273 and goes right in between the YMCA property and the subdivision. It goes all the way down, but before it gets to the river, about 150 yards, it splits off into 3 separate paths. Now, this is a utility right-of-way. Telephone companies, gas companies, they have lines underneath the ground, sometimes above the ground, and they have a right to come on your property and maintain those lines, and they mow that path once a year. But it's this path that when it gets down to the river, it splits off into 3 separate paths. And so the question is which path was Ira's car found down? And of course, which path was her body lying next to the river? Because when Fedora picked up this story, we scoured the internet and we didn't find any consistent diagrams of exactly where she was located. So that's always important when we're looking at a crime scene. Where was the body? So that was difficult to ascertain. Of course, when Fedora picked up this story, Mark Carver had already been convicted. So it was alleged by prosecutors during the trial that he was very close to where Ira's body was found. So, of course, we have to know where Ira's body was found. And we want to know where exactly Mark Carver was. And again, the information I was finding on the websites out there that were reporting on this story just seemed to be inconsistent. So we needed to get more solid on that. The other curious thing about the whole crime scene area is exactly which path did Ira's car take down to the river. We know we saw a photograph coming out of the YMCA parking lot, heading down a road that went right down the subdivision. That would have been Park View Drive. At the end of Park View Drive is a T intersection. We know that at that T intersection, she must have taken a right, because that's where those 3 paths are. But which path, again, she went down is a mystery. And again, we're assuming that she came down Parkview Drive. That's what it looks like when she's coming out of the YMCA parking lot. And of course, there's always the intangibles, isn't there? of the crime scene? What does it feel like? Sure, we've heard all of the reports. It was isolated, it was wooded, but there's something about being there that provides one with a sense of what this scene felt like. So there's the intangible. Also, I noticed that if she did travel down Parkview Drive and eventually wound up down one of the 3 right-of-ways, she would have had to have gone past an area on the maps that looks like, I couldn't tell by Google Earth Pro, is it a pile of dirt? Is it where a building used to be? Is it, but that might be important. It was something that was a mystery. If her car indeed went past it, we want to know, what is it? Google Earth Pro has a unique feature where you can go to the tool menu and go view and then historical images. So we can get historical viewings of this area as well. Go back in time. Of course, we want to know where everything else fit into place down at the crime scene area. Where were the jet skiers? Where was the guy that called? There was a guy that called 911, a construction worker. Where was he located? Where were the cops? How did they arrive to the scene? Who was there? What did they see? A lot of other pieces that have to do with the crime scene that we want to know. So, based on the fact that we could not ascertain exactly where her body was found by looking at the Google Earth images and satellite images, and we couldn't ascertain exactly where Mark Carver's fishing spot was, we know from the ending of our last episode 4 that the jet skiers had placed a cross that could be seen day and night, right where her body had lain. Perhaps that cross is still there. We have not figured out exactly where Mark Carver's fishing spot was, but there is an image from the Dateline program which, by walking the area, we may be able to identify where his fishing spot was. Up on campus, we have a rough idea of what she was doing that morning. We have some deviations in the accounts that were reported. Perhaps tracing her path that morning might help resolve some of those questions. So, I guess that means it's time. It's time. It's time. It's time. It's time.
Attention please. All passengers must have a boarding pass and photo ID before entering the passenger screening checkpoint. Please have those items available as you approach the screening checkpoint.
My first night in Charlotte. It rained like hell. But as I reflected on the conflicting reports of Ira's whereabouts that morning, I barely noticed Mother Nature's gentle tempest softly raging just beyond my window pane.
Yarmolenko was last seen at 9:45 Monday morning on UMCC's campus.
We know that she stopped at a credit union and then made a quick pit stop at Jackson's Java in University City. How she was found 35 miles.
Cops are still trying to figure out how she got there. We know earlier in the day, Ira took an exam, then went to the ATM machine, and then to Jackson Java, where she worked but wasn't working that day. And finally, down the road to make a donation at Goodwill.
When Yarmolenko drove away from Goodwill, she went to Jackson's Java coffee shop to visit with coworkers. The shop is now filled with flowers.
Her records showed she'd been to the bank, deposited money, just after 10 a.m.
And we were able to get surveillance videos of her there. Showed her alone.
Just 15 minutes after stopping at the bank, here was Ira again. This surveillance video at a Goodwill store just off campus. She gave away clothes, chatted briefly with an employee, seemed not to be worried about anything.
Not
Not
worried
upset,
about a thing.
not unhappy.
Nothing.
Just alone in her car, running errands. 30 minutes later, 20 miles away, there she was again, in this surveillance video from a YMCA parking lot across the river from the campus. That's her in her car, driving toward the river. Had to be her, said Detective Terry.
The mystery about what happened to Ira after that has many students feeling uneasy.
But why in the world was Ira even on that secluded wooded bluff overlooking the Catawba?
I couldn't stop thinking about which of the three right-of-ways her car went down. And of course where her body was found lying.
Getting to the place where Ira Yarmolenko's body was found is not easy. It's remote, hidden by trees.
Ira's body was laying right here. Her feet are down at this end, and her head is up where your
2
feet
weeks
are.
after finding her body on the banks of the Catawba River, Brenda Treat and Dennis Theobald put up a cross in Ira Yarmolenko's memory. Flowers drape the cross, and on top sits a solar-powered light, so the memorial will be visible at all times.
It solely represents the light that Ira had. Her light will shine. As that light shines, her light will shine.
Cross visible, day and night.
Right here, 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 right here.
Mark Carver's spot, where he was fishing. How far was it from where Ira was found?
Though he did remember hearing an unusual sound that day, a scraping sound.
But he didn't really think too much about it because they were making a housing development.
Just up the riverbank from his fishing spot, in fact. So he and Mark were used to hearing that construction noise. Didn't bother him, they just kept on fishing. Mark stayed a little longer than the youth. He left just about 1 p.m., both oblivious to the terrible crime that happened just about 100 feet away. 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 100 feet away.
The DNA of both of these defendants was feet from where a recently murdered girl was. They lied about being near it. They were in an extremely isolated area where they should have been able to hear any commotion, any trauma to her, any damage. They said they didn't hear anything.
Still falls the rain. Dark as the world of man. Black as our loss. And blind as the 1940 nails upon the cross. Sure, I suppose ordinarily the weather might have served to dampen one's spirits in this situation, but given the disjointed facts in this case, it seemed almost strangely appropriate for some odd reason.
Well, Bobby, Irina Yarmolenko was 20 years old. We don't know how long she had been a student here on the campus of UNCC, but this is finals week here, and so it's possible that's the reason that she was here yesterday morning. It was the last time that she was seen alive.
She left in her car something she rarely drove. Yet another piece, her car down a steep embankment and this open door. Investigators say she did not fall out of it. That means getting out on her own or getting pushed. Police aren't saying if they found evidence of another person in the car.
Your feet are right here.
Investigators know someone drove the car down the embankment.
You can see where the front wheels of the vehicle were actually in motion.
Her keys were out further uphill, and the driver and back passenger doors of her car both open.
The scatterbrain is like the pattern of rain. Neither here nor there, but everywhere, 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 everywhere.
And when we got to 85 up here, we looked back. I said, John, the helicopter's flying over where we go fishing. So we turned around at the bowling alley and came back.
It takes a hell of a strong person. Asphyxiation takes a hell of, it's not an instant thing neither. It takes a lot of muscle power to kill that person. Struggling, you know, with her feet kicking and struggling. It would take them 5 minutes for at least 5 minutes for her to die.
What would you say to Ira Yarmolenko's family who feel like there's some sense of closure in this case that you and your cousin have been arrested?
It's not, they got the wrong one. The one that done it's still out there.
Yeah. So he came on and talked to us a few minutes. I would say 10 minutes, and he kept asking us, did we see anything? Could we see the car? I said, what car? I said, there ain't no car here. He said, then he told us a little later on about the car. It was down there against the stump next to the river, but I walked out in the water. You could look up there, but it was so thickety, so growed up, you just couldn't see it.
Were any of these doors open when they found her?
The jet skiers claim that both the doors were open.
So there I was, lost in scattered, fragmented, illusory conversations with hey, ho, the wind and the rain. For the rain, it raineth every day.
A lot of times getting at the truth is not a straight line. It's not really easy.
And we have a few irrefutable facts. Ira Yarmolenko was on the banks of the Catawba River. It's a place where she shouldn't traditionally be. She is dead from asphyxiation. She is murdered. And she's murdered with items that she brought there with her. Those are facts. Here's the interesting thing. This is a strange kind of building mystery. You find what you believe are 120 pieces, only to realize it's a 500-piece puzzle. And then you go out and get 300 pieces, and then you realize it's an 1,000-piece puzzle. But one thing it does do is it makes you want answers.
What's going on here? I mean, well, wait a minute. Does that fit, or does that just like not fit at all? There's an old defense attorney in Toledo, Ohio, when I worked there. He used to say, a murder is an assault where someone dies. You know, we're being told a little fairy tale in which some people are devils and some people are angels, right? And whenever you have a story which is populated by angels and devils, look out, because somebody's telling the tale.
There was a young man swinging on a vine. He was across the river over there. They had a vine they swung out on that dropped in the water. Well, nobody didn't know this little boy couldn't swim. He's about, I think he's 17 years old. He swung out and dropped, and he never came back up.
While I was at lunch, I got a tip.
Does justice ever cease to cry out from the sepulchre? This is the Erie Yarmolenko story, but make no mistake, there is a battle playing out before us. One of a number of final chapters to her story, if you will, for Mark Carver's life is hanging in the balance. His recent court victories are now being reviewed by the highest courts in North Carolina. And if you have reviewed other information on the internet pertaining to this case, and you believe in Mark Carver's innocence, the North Carolina Center for Actual Innocence needs your support. You may go to their website, nccai.org. In the upper right-hand corner of the homepage is a Contribute Now button where you may make your tax-deductible one-time or monthly contribution. If, on the other hand, you believe the jury of 12 got it right the first time around, Fedora would encourage you to support the local law enforcement agencies involved in this case. That would be the city of Mount Holly, North Carolina, or the county of Gaston, North Carolina. For the city of Mount Holly, you may send a check or money order to 400 East Central Avenue, Mount Holly, North Carolina, 28120. And for the county, of Gaston is 128 West Main Avenue, Gastonia, North Carolina. Those contributions as well may be partially tax deductible. Please consult your tax advisor. Fedora is independent and not affiliated with either of these organizations or agencies.